The Seattle Mariners need this player in 2025. Let's talk about it. So in today's video, there's going to be a specific player we're going to be focusing on, and I really think it's a player that the Seattle Mariners really need to go out and sign. In case you couldn't tell by the thumbnail, but that player is Anthony Santander. Starting off, of course, I had to ask you guys your thoughts on this. So I asked you guys, should the Seattle Mariners sign Anthony Santander this offseason? And 69% of you said absolutely, while 20% of you said you would rather have other options. Then I also followed that up with, if the Seattle Mariners signed Anthony Santander this offseason, is that enough to make them better in 2025? Basically saying, is that enough? If that's all they did, would the Seattle Mariners be a better team in 2025? And 33% of you said absolutely, and 62% of you said meh, need more. So I'm actually very much up in the air that if this was the only move the Seattle Mariners made this offseason, whether that would make them a much better team in 2025. The one thing I can tell you is that Anthony Santander is a very good baseball player, but in my hypothetical lineup, I do not have him at DH like most people would think. And I'm going to go into some more detail on why I don't think he should be the DH if they were to get him, but I'm going to go over some of these hypothetical lineups as well as some contract situations. But I'm not the only one that thinks the Mariners should go out and get Anthony Santander, because someone from Bleacher Report tried to predict this 2025 Seattle Mariners opening day lineup, and Santander was the DH hitting fourth, while Luis Urias is also in this lineup, so technically he's already wrong, but Anthony Santander is the DH in this hypothetical lineup. So in my hypothetical lineup with Anthony Santander in it, I have Victor Robles playing left field leading off, Julio in center second, Randy being the DH in the 3-hole, Anthony Santander playing right field in the 4-hole, Cal hitting fifth, obviously catching, JT or Luke Raley at first base. Second base, I did throw Gleyber Torres in there as a very realistic option for the Mariners to have this offseason. And then third base is Josh Rojas, and shortstop is JP Crawford. And I know there are a lot of you that are kind of against, obviously, keeping Josh Rojas just as a player in general, but obviously leaving him at third base. But I think if you get Anthony Santander and Gleyber Torres and also bring back JT, that is probably all you're going to get out of the Mariners this offseason. But in terms of what Anthony Santander is most likely going to get in his free agency, there are some sites that say that, he'll maybe receive a 6-year, $142 million contract, while also someone on Sports Illustrated estimate to be a Nick Castellanos type contract where he'll probably be like 5 years, $100 million, so that would be $20 million AAV. So in terms of a bidding war, obviously the Seattle Mariners will not win a bidding war with most teams because they won't even really try, but I think having him at $20 million AAV is definitely something they can afford, especially since they got rid of the Polo option, and who really knows what they're going to do with the other Mitch's contract. But let's start off with Anthony Santander's career stats, and as you can see by his 2024 numbers, he put up the most home runs he has ever in his career with 44, which is absolutely insane. 102 RBIs, a below league average strikeout rate, a 235 average, 129 WRC plus, and a 3.3 WAR, which all for the most part were our career highs. And as we do as Mariner fans, a lot of people ask, okay, cool, he had 44 home runs, but if he played in T-Mobile, would he have that many? And the answer to your question is actually yes. If he played in T-Mobile, he would have had 38 home runs this season. And mind you, that is if every home run he hit was in T-Mobile. And in 2023, he hit 29 home runs, but if he played in T-Mobile, he actually would have had 37. So his power will definitely translate to T-Mobile, obviously not as much as it did in 2024. He would have had 6 less home runs, but I think his power is really not any issue. So let's get into my point of why I believe that Randy Arozarena, if anyone, should be the DH while Anthony Santander plays right field. Now, obviously, if they were to get him, this gives a little bit of leeway in terms of just moving things around. So one day Santander could be the DH, or maybe one day Cal will be the DH, one day maybe Justin Turner will be the DH, etc. They have that flexibility to move it around if they do bring back, obviously, Justin Turner and go out and get Santander. But there is a reason behind why I really don't think that Anthony Santander should be strictly a DH. So with this hypothetical lineup, this is kind of in my mind how it works, is that Mitch Garver will not be playing every single day. Maybe he won't even play in 80 games this year. He will be strictly a backup catcher, in my opinion. Cal Raleigh has caught in 378 games in the past 3 seasons, which is a ton of games and tons of wear and tear on his body. So I definitely think that having him DH a little bit more this season while having Mitch be kind of in that backup catcher role is something that'll be very helpful for not only Cal, but for the Mariners. Hopefully they can go on a long run. So basically at that rate, Cal is averaging 126 games behind the plate a year. So I think if they can lower that, hopefully to maybe, 115, so it's a little bit less wear and tear on his body, and hopefully get into the playoffs, he will be a lot more healthy than he was, as you could tell by the end of the year, he definitely gets worn down. So for that reason, I kind of have Mitch Garver not really being a DH at all for the most part, maybe if he really likes a matchup or whatever the case may be, but I think having him as a strictly backup catcher and maybe getting him in 50 games this season is probably just going to have to be how it's going to be unless he really gets hot and he really starts to figure it out. Now, one other thing that may be a little bit of a hot take around here, because we don't really know, but obviously it's baseball, so anything can happen, but I do think that also you have to take into consideration that Victor Robles will not be as good as he was in 2024. I'm not saying that Victor will be bad, I just don't know if he can maintain that 310 average, But whatever it may be, I do think Victor Robles is kind of up in the air on whether he will continue to be that successful and continue to be that consistent. But I do think he will be. I'm just saying that is one thing you have to take into consideration. So at one point, your outfield could consist of having Randy Arozarena, Julio, and Anthony Santander in a single game based on obviously how Victor Robles continues to perform. But kind of here's the main reason why I think Anthony Santander should be in the outfield. This past season, he did play 130 games in right field, so he is very used to playing the outfield. But one thing I kind of wanted to show you guys is the difference between Randy Arozarena in his career being a DH and Anthony Santander being a DH. And one thing you need to take into consideration before looking at these stats is neither one of them are particularly good at being a DH. They clearly like playing the field much better. But if you had to pick the lesser of two evils, here's kind of why I would go with that. So Anthony Santander has played 134 games as a DH, where he has a 208 batting average with 132 strikeouts, 27 home runs, and 71 RBIs with an 80 OPS plus. And only a 695 OPS, which is well below what he is when he plays other positions like first base, left field, center field, right field. So DH is definitely not necessarily Anthony Santander's favorite part of the game. Now moving into Randy Arozarena, he has played 69 games as a DH with a 244 average, 9 home runs, 38 RBIs, a 77 OPS plus, and a 693 OPS. So what I'm trying to get at is obviously neither one of them are great as a DH, but it is something that they can get used to over the course of a season. So here are the numbers that I really want you to dig deeper and look at. So I'm going to put both of their stats up on the screen. I want you to look at Anthony Santander's right field numbers versus Randy Arozarena's left field numbers. So arguably they have about the same number of plate appearances, give or take, and Randy Arozarena has 69 home runs with 236 RBIs and a 253 batting average with a 103 OPS plus as a left fielder. Now, Anthony Santander, on the other hand, has 107 home runs with a 296 RBIs, a 248 batting average, and a 103 OPS plus. So as you can tell, Anthony Santander is much more comfortable and hits a lot more home runs when he is playing the field every single day. So you kind of have to take that into consideration with who is more comfortable playing the field and also hitting. And Randy Arozarena has a much higher batting average as a DH than Anthony Santander does. So I'm sure some of you will still disagree with that, and that is totally fine. Just in my personal opinion, if Anthony Santander has most of his power numbers and most of his RBIs playing the field, I think he gets and weighs more than Randy Arozarena in this case. But the main reason I think that Anthony Santander would be a huge pickup for the Seattle Mariners this offseason is the Seattle Mariners only had one guy clear 25 plus home runs, and that was obviously Cal Raleigh with, I believe, 34, and the second best was Luke Raley with 22. So while I know us Mariner fans do not really want too many guys that hit for low average, and as we know, Anthony Santander hits for about 235, which isn't terrible, and he does have a below average strikeout rate, I think this is a guy they really need to go out and get because he will almost guaranteed put up over 30 home runs this upcoming year. The other problem with this is that he's most likely going to be getting a multi-year contract, and as we know in the Jerry Dipoto era, he's only given that out to one hitter, and that was Mitch Garver. But if you go out and get Anthony Santander, this gives you a legit cleanup hitter that will hit you 30 plus home runs without a doubt. So I think this is definitely one of the top free agent targets that I think the Seattle Mariners should really go after this offseason to really make this lineup powerful. And like I said, since as we know, the power was down a lot last year, I think this is a guy that definitely helps in the power department. But please let me know what you guys think, and if you think Anthony Santander is a realistic player the Mariners can go get. I do think it is very realistic. I don't think 20 million AAV is too much to ask for, but I do think this is a solid player that they should go get. So otherwise, let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.